Hey everyone, tonight we journey into the shadowed corridors of power to uncover the remarkable transformation of Darth Marr, the legendary Dark Council member who defied every expectation of what a Sith Lord should be, becoming the Empire's greatest protector and ultimately the galaxy's most unlikely guardian. From the storm-wracked spires of Dromund Kaas to his final sacrifice against cosmic forces that threatened all civilized life, his story is one of wisdom earned through darkness, strength found in unity, and the courage to transcend the very nature of power itself. So before you settle in for tonight's epic tale, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely find value in these deep explorations of galactic legends. But here's something: nearly 79% of viewers who watch these stories haven't subscribed yet. And honestly, your subscription makes all the difference in helping me continue these journeys into the forgotten corners of beloved universes. Drop a comment and let me know what corner of the world you're listening from tonight and what time it is where you are. There's something truly special about knowing we're all gathered here from different continents and time zones, sharing this moment of storytelling across the vastness of space and time. Now, dim those lights. Maybe turn on that fan for some gentle white noise, pull your blankets close, and prepare to discover why one Sith Lord's greatest victory was learning when not to be Sith at all. But first, let me share with you a scene that will echo through every revelation we uncover tonight. The year is 3,630 years before the Battle of Yavin, and in the highest chamber of the Dark Council on Dromund Kaas, a figure in ceremonial Sith armor stands before a holographic display that spans the entire wall. The projection shows not the familiar territories of the Sith Empire or the Republic, but star systems that shouldn't exist, technologies that defy understanding, and fleet formations that dwarf anything known to galactic civilization. This is Darth Marr, most pragmatic member of the Dark Council, the Sith Lord, who earned loyalty through protection rather than fear. His mask, bearing the angular designs that have become synonymous with Imperial authority, reflects the cold light of the impossible images before him. But beneath that emotionless facade, a mind that has spent decades balancing empire and pragmatism wrestles with intelligence that changes everything. The report he's reviewing speaks of a civilization that calls itself eternal, led by an emperor whose very existence challenges the fundamental understanding of life, death, and the Force itself. Ships that phase in and out of reality, as if the laws of physics are merely suggestions. Armies that seem to appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. Most disturbing of all, evidence that this eternal empire has been watching, cataloging, and preparing for something that will reshape the galaxy itself. As Marr studies the data, his personal communicator activates with an encrypted message that sends chills through even his disciplined mind. The message is brief, but its implications are staggering. It reads simply: Council Member Marr, we know you have discovered our preparations. We know you understand what approaches. The question now is whether you will be wise enough to unite your enemies before it is too late. The harvest of this galaxy begins soon, and only those who can transcend their nature will survive what comes next. Valkorion sends his regards. Marr sets down the communicator and walks to the vast transparisteel window that overlooks the Imperial capital. Below him, millions of Imperial citizens go about their daily lives, completely unaware that their existence hangs in the balance of decisions being made in chambers like this one. The weight of protecting them has always driven his choices, but now that protection requires something that goes against every principle of Sith philosophy, he activates his private holoterminal and begins composing a message that just days ago would have been unthinkable. The recipient is Supreme Chancellor Sari of the Galactic Republic. The message is simple but revolutionary. Chancellor, we need to talk, not as Sith and Republic, but as guardians of galactic civilization. What threatens us transcends our conflicts. I propose a meeting that history will either remember as the moment we chose survival or forget because we chose pride instead. As he sends the message, Marr removes his mask and stares at his own reflection in the darkened window. The face that looks back shows the toll of carrying impossible burdens. His eyes hold depths that speak of someone who has looked into the abyss of galactic politics and chosen to stare back with determination rather than succumb to despair. If protecting the galaxy means working with those we have called enemies for generations, he says to the empty chamber, then I will find a way to make ancient hatred into unexpected alliance. If preserving civilization requires sacrificing the Sith identity I have carried my entire life, then that sacrifice will be made willingly. And if standing against cosmic horror means becoming something that transcends Sith and Jedi alike, then I will become whatever the galaxy needs me to be. Thunder rolls across the eternal storms of Dromund Kaas, as if the Force itself responds to this declaration. In this moment, in this chamber above the sleeping capital, Darth Marr begins the transformation that will redefine what it means to serve the dark side of the Force. But how does a Sith Lord raised from childhood in the ways of passion and individual strength learn to find power in cooperation? How does someone trained to dominate learn that true strength sometimes means knowing when to yield? And what could be so terrifying that it would force the most traditional of galactic institutions to evolve or face extinction? This is the complete chronicle of that transformation, told as the ancient Jedi historians might have recorded it, with the wisdom of hindsight and the weight of galactic consequence. A tale that begins in the training halls, where young Sith learn to channel their anger, and ends with the ultimate realization that the greatest anger of all might be the fury of protection rather than the rage of conquest. The Great Galactic War had ended 3 years prior in what Imperial propagandists called a decisive victory over the corrupt Republic. The Treaty of Coruscant had been signed, Imperial territory had expanded, and for the first time in generations, the Sith Empire enjoyed a period of stability and growth. It was during this golden age of Imperial power, around the year 3650 before the Battle of Yavin, that the foundations of Darth Marr's unique philosophy were taking their final shape. Dromund Kaas stood as the crown jewel of this resurgent empire. The ancient capital world pulsed with dark side energy that had been cultivating for over a millennium, its eternal storms serving as both symbol and source of Sith power. Towering pyramidal temples rose from the jungle floor like obsidian mountains, their surfaces carved with hieroglyphs that seemed to shift and dance in the constant lightning displays overhead. These weren't merely buildings but living conduits of the Force, each stone placed according to ancient Sith architectural principles that amplified the power of those within. In the deepest meditation chambers of the grandest temple, where the air itself thrummed with concentrated Force energy, the most promising young Sith of the post-war generation completed their final trials. The Academy had never seen students quite like this cohort, raised during wartime but coming of age during peace. They possessed both the discipline of conflict and the perspective to question what that conflict had truly accomplished. Among these students, one figure stood apart not for his raw power or political connections, but for the questions he asked and the answers he refused to accept. Mad had earned his place among the Academy's elite through a combination of strategic brilliance and an unusual interpretation of Sith philosophy. Where others saw the dark side as a tool for personal dominance, he viewed it as a responsibility to protect and strengthen Imperial civilization. His lightsaber technique, while not the most flashy in his class, proved devastatingly effective because it focused on ending conflicts quickly and efficiently rather than prolonging them for dramatic effect. More importantly, his approach to command during training exercises had caught the attention of instructors and visiting Dark Council members alike. When given control of mixed units combining Force users and regular Imperial military, Marr consistently achieved superior results by treating every soldier as a valuable asset rather than expendable resource. His strategies prioritized objectives over ego, victory over personal glory, and the preservation of Imperial strength over individual advancement. This approach had its roots in Marr's childhood experiences on Imperial worlds that bordered Republic space. Unlike many Sith who came from the sheltered core worlds, he had grown up seeing Imperial citizens who depended on Sith protection for their daily survival. Factory workers who trusted that Imperial might would keep Republic raiders away from their families. Farmers who relied on Sith-protected trade routes to bring their crops to market. Children who played in streets that remained safe because somewhere Sith Lords made the hard decisions that kept threats at bay. These memories shaped his understanding of what power truly meant. In his private journals from this period, entries that would later be studied by Imperial historians, he wrote, "Power without purpose is mere destruction. The Force grants us strength, not so that we might rule over others, but so that we might protect what cannot protect itself. The weak see enemies to be conquered, the strong see civilizations to be preserved and improved." Such thoughts might have marked another student as philosophically compromised, but Marr's practical abilities protected him from such accusations. His tactical assessments were sought after by fellow students and instructors alike. His leadership during Academy War Games demonstrated an intuitive understanding of both large-scale strategy and individual psychology that impressed even the most traditionalist observers. Most importantly, his loyalty to the Empire appeared absolute, even if his interpretation of service differed from conventional Sith thinking. The Academy itself during this period reflected the Empire's growing confidence and stability. The training halls, once focused purely on combat readiness during wartime, now included expanded curricula in governance, economics, and what Imperial educators called civilizational management. Young Sith learned not just how to fight, but how to administer worlds, manage trade networks, and maintain the complex infrastructure that kept the Empire functioning. It was in these administrative courses that Marr truly excelled. While other students found such subjects tedious compared to lightsaber combat and force training, he approached them with the same intensity he brought to martial studies. He understood instinctively that an empire built solely on military might would eventually collapse from internal decay, while one that could balance strength with genuine governance might endure for millennia. His dormitory chamber reflected this comprehensive approach to Sith education, where others displayed trophies of defeated opponents or artifacts of personal achievement. Marr's walls were covered with detailed maps of Imperial territory, economic charts tracking resource flows between systems, and historical analyses of successful and failed galactic governments. He studied the rise and fall of previous empires with the dedication of a scholar, always asking the same fundamental question: what separated temporary conquest from lasting civilization? The Force flowed differently around Marr than around his fellow students, something that even his instructors noticed during group meditation sessions. Where others channeled passion and anger into raw power, his connection to the dark side seemed filtered through a deeper understanding of purpose and responsibility. His emotions ran just as deep as any Sith's, but they were focused outward rather than inward, directed toward protecting what he valued rather than dominating what he desired. This unique relationship with the Force caught the attention of Master Kortai, an elder Sith whose family had served the Empire since its founding. The ancient pure blood had survived the initial Sith exodus from Korriban, the centuries of building Imperial civilization on Dromund Kaas, and the recent war with the Republic. His perspective spanned generations of galactic history, and in private tutorials with promising students like Marr, he shared wisdom that went far beyond standard academy instruction. "Young one," Master Kortai would say during their evening sessions, surrounded by holocrons that preserved the memories of Sith Lords from the earliest days of the Empire, "you possess something that has become rare among our kind in recent generations. You understand that the dark side is not merely about taking what you want, but about protecting what you love." The ancient Sith species knew this truth before we adopted their ways and their name. True power serves something greater than itself. These conversations helped shape Marr's evolving philosophy, but they also introduced him to historical perspectives that few Sith of his generation possessed. He learned about the cyclical nature of galactic conflict, the patterns that seemed to repeat across centuries of warfare between major powers. More disturbing, he began to recognize hints in the ancient records of threats that transcended traditional political boundaries. References to watchers from beyond the rim appeared in multiple historical documents from different eras. Archaeological reports described ruins of civilizations that had vanished not through conquest or natural disaster, but through some form of systematic absorption that left behind only empty worlds and inexplicable technology. Most intriguing of all, certain Force-sensitive bloodlines seemed to carry genetic markers that suggested deliberate cultivation across multiple generations. These mysteries would not find their resolution until much later in Marr's career, but they planted seeds of awareness that would eventually bloom into the understanding that saved galactic civilization. For now, they simply reinforced his growing conviction that the Empire's strength lay not in its ability to dominate enemies, but in its capacity to protect its people and preserve the foundations of civilized life. As his final Academy trials approached, Marr had already begun to envision a different kind of Sith service. Not the traditional path of personal advancement through political maneuvering and rival elimination, but a form of leadership that would strengthen the Empire from within, while preparing it for challenges that might arise from directions no one yet suspected. The storms continued to rage over Dromund Kaas, as they had for 1,000 years, their lightning illuminating the temples where the next generation of Sith Lords prepared to inherit the galaxy. In those halls of learning, surrounded by the accumulated wisdom and warnings of countless previous generations, a young Sith named Marr prepared to embark on a journey that would ultimately teach him the most important lesson any Force user could learn, that the greatest strength of all might be knowing when not to fight at all. The graduation ceremony from the Sith Academy marked more than just the end of Marr's formal education. It represented his first official step into the labyrinthine world of Imperial politics, where every decision carried consequences that rippled across star systems and affected millions of lives. Unlike his classmates who eagerly anticipated their first taste of real power, Marr approached his new responsibilities with a mixture of anticipation and sobering awareness of the weight he was about to shoulder. His first assignment came directly from the Dark Council itself, a rare honor for a newly graduated Sith. The mission parameters seemed straightforward enough on the surface. Imperial intelligence had detected unusual activity along several outer rim trade routes that connected core Imperial worlds to recently acquired territories. Merchant vessels were reporting encounters with ships bearing unknown configurations, and several trade stations had gone silent without explanation. The Council needed someone with both tactical acumen and diplomatic flexibility to investigate these disturbances while maintaining the delicate balance of Imperial expansion. What made this assignment particularly significant was its scope. Rather than being placed under the direct supervision of an established Sith Lord, Marr was given operational autonomy over a mixed force of Imperial Navy vessels, intelligence operatives, and a small contingent of fellow young Sith who would serve as his immediate subordinates. It was an unprecedented level of responsibility for someone fresh from the Academy, and it spoke to the impression he had made during his final trials. The briefing took place in a secure chamber deep within the Imperial Intelligence Headquarters, a facility that existed in the shadows cast by the more visible Sith temples. The room itself was deliberately austere, designed to focus attention on information rather than intimidation. Director Keeper, the enigmatic head of Imperial intelligence, whose real name was known only to the Emperor himself, personally conducted the briefing alongside Darth Marr's newly assigned handler, a council member known for his own pragmatic approach to Imperial governance. The intelligence reports painted a picture that was both fascinating and deeply concerning. The unknown vessels appeared to use propulsion systems that defied conventional understanding of hyperspace technology. They could appear and disappear from sensor readings in ways that suggested either revolutionary cloaking capabilities or some form of interdimensional travel that current Imperial science couldn't explain. More troubling still, the few surviving witnesses described ship designs that seemed to blend organic curves with geometric precision in ways that felt alien to both Imperial and Republic aesthetic traditions. Director Keeper's analysis was characteristically thorough and unsettling. "Lord Marr," he said, his voice carrying the measured tone of someone who had spent decades parsing truth from deception, "what we're observing suggests the presence of a third party in galactic affairs. These encounters follow patterns that indicate systematic reconnaissance rather than random piracy or exploration. Someone is cataloging our capabilities, our trade networks, and our response protocols with a level of detail that suggests long-term strategic planning." The implications hit Marr immediately. If another major power was conducting intelligence operations within Imperial space, it represented a fundamental shift in the galactic balance that had defined politics for centuries. The Republic, despite its recent defeats, remained a known quantity whose capabilities and limitations were well understood by Imperial strategists. An unknown third party, especially one with apparently superior technology, changed every calculation about Imperial security and expansion. But it was the personal accounts that truly captured Marr's attention. Imperial Navy Captain Zarek, a veteran of the recent war whose service record spoke to both competence and reliability, had encountered one of the mysterious vessels during a routine patrol near the Dromund system itself. His report described a ship that seemed to phase in and out of normal space, conducting what appeared to be detailed scans of Imperial military installations before vanishing without engaging in hostilities. "The strangest part, my lord," Captain Zarek had written in his official report, "was the feeling that we were being evaluated rather than threatened. Their scanning patterns suggested they were cataloging our defensive capabilities and ship configurations with scientific precision. When we moved to intercept, they withdrew not with the haste of someone caught in hostile territory, but with the measured pace of researchers who had gathered sufficient data for their current purposes." This description resonated deeply with Marr's analytical mind. The behavior suggested an intelligence-gathering operation conducted by a civilization confident enough in its technological superiority to operate within heavily defended Imperial space without apparent concern for retaliation. It implied planning on a scale that transcended typical military or political objectives, pointing instead toward some larger strategic purpose that remained hidden. As Marr absorbed the briefings and prepared for his first independent command, he found himself grappling with questions that went far beyond the immediate tactical challenges of his assignment. The patterns described in the intelligence reports reminded him of historical accounts he had studied during his academy years, references to previous eras when galactic civilization had faced disruptions that seemed to come from beyond the boundaries of known space. Ancient Jedi chronicles, captured during various Imperial military operations, contained scattered references to times of testing when established powers found themselves confronted by forces that operated according to unfamiliar rules and pursued objectives that defied conventional understanding. Similarly, the oldest Sith holocrons preserved memories of occasions when the dark side itself seemed to respond to influences that originated from sources beyond traditional Force traditions. These historical parallels suggested that what the Empire now faced might not be entirely unprecedented, even if the specific circumstances were unique to the current era. The possibility that galactic civilization periodically encountered challenges that required adaptation and evolution rather than simple military response began to shape Marr's approach to his investigation. His preparation for the mission reflected this broader perspective. While other young Sith might have focused primarily on assembling the most powerful Force users and the heaviest military assets available, Marr instead prioritized diversity of capability and flexibility of response. His team included not only combat specialists, but also archaeologists familiar with pre-Republic civilizations, xenobiologists capable of analyzing unfamiliar technologies, and diplomatic personnel trained in first contact protocols. The selection of his flagship, the Imperial dreadnought Harrow's Edge, demonstrated similar thinking. Rather than choosing the newest or most heavily armed vessel available, he selected a ship known for its advanced sensor arrays, comprehensive research facilities, and ability to operate independently in unknown regions for extended periods. The vessel's crew roster reflected his emphasis on competence and adaptability over raw power, including specialists whose expertise might prove crucial when confronting the genuinely unexpected. As his task force prepared to depart Dromund Kaas for the Outer Rim territories where the mysterious encounters had been reported, Marr spent his final evening on the capital world in private meditation. The ritual took place not in the grand temples where most Sith conducted their communion with the dark side, but in a small chamber within his personal quarters that he had arranged according to principles drawn from multiple Force traditions. The meditation revealed currents within the Force that felt subtly different from what he had experienced during his academy training. There was an undercurrent of anticipation, as if the galaxy itself was preparing for some significant shift in the fundamental patterns that governed civilized existence. More intriguingly, he sensed echoes of similar anticipation from across the galactic community, suggesting that whatever approached would affect far more than just the Sith Empire. When he emerged from meditation, Marr understood that his first independent mission represented something more profound than a routine investigation. He was embarking on a journey that would test not only his tactical abilities and Force powers, but his fundamental understanding of what it meant to serve the Empire and protect its people. The mysterious third party conducting reconnaissance within Imperial space might represent the first sign of challenges that would require him to transcend every assumption he had been taught about power, politics, and the nature of galactic civilization itself. The departure from Dromund Kaas took place during one of the planet's rare atmospheric calms, when the eternal storms temporarily subsided and allowed clear passage through the upper atmosphere. As Harrow's Edge lifted away from the Imperial capital, Marr stood at the observation deck watching the city lights fade into the jungle darkness below. Each flickering point of illumination represented Imperial citizens whose safety and prosperity depended on decisions made by people like him in chambers and starships they would never see. This perspective had become central to how he understood his role as a Sith Lord. Unlike his academy classmates who viewed their graduation as the beginning of personal advancement through the ranks of Imperial hierarchy, Marr saw his new position as the acceptance of a sacred trust. The power that flowed through him via the dark side carried with it an obligation to protect and strengthen the civilization that had nurtured and trained him. His task force reflected this philosophy in its composition and organization. Rather than assembling a traditional Imperial military formation designed primarily for intimidation and overwhelming force, Marr had created something more akin to an exploration and analysis unit capable of adapting to unexpected circumstances. The 3 vessels under his command included not only his flagship dreadnought, but also a modified cruiser equipped with advanced research facilities and a fast corvette optimized for reconnaissance and rapid communication. The personnel aboard these ships represented a carefully chosen blend of Imperial Navy regulars, intelligence operatives, and Force-sensitive individuals whose training encompassed far more than traditional Sith combat techniques. Captain Zirik, whose initial encounter with the mysterious vessels had helped trigger this investigation, served as Marr's naval advisor and brought decades of experience in frontier operations. Intelligence analyst Kira Thorne provided expertise in xenoarchaeology and had spent years studying the remnants of civilizations that had vanished from galactic history under unclear circumstances. Perhaps most importantly, Marr had requested the inclusion of Lieutenant Colonel Jaxo, an Imperial Army officer. whose background included extensive experience with non-human populations within Imperial territory. Her insights into how different species interpreted technology, social organization, and military doctrine had proven invaluable during the recent integration of worlds conquered during the war with the Republic. If they encountered representatives of an unknown civilization, her diplomatic and anthropological skills might prove crucial to avoiding unnecessary conflict. The journey to the Outer Rim territories where the mysterious encounters had occurred took several days through hyperspace, providing Marr with opportunities to deepen his understanding of the situation they were investigating. Each evening he convened briefing sessions that brought together the various specialists aboard his flagship to analyze the available intelligence from multiple perspectives. These meetings had an informal character that would have seemed unusual to observers familiar with traditional Imperial military hierarchy, but they produced insights that purely top-down command structures often missed. Captain Zerek's detailed reconstruction of his encounter with the unknown vessel revealed patterns that became more significant when analyzed alongside other reported incidents. The mysterious ships consistently appeared near major trade routes and military installations, but their scanning activities focused on infrastructure and logistics rather than weapons and defenses. They seemed particularly interested in communication networks, resource distribution systems, and the organizational structures that kept Imperial civilization functioning smoothly. It's almost as if they're conducting an efficiency analysis, Lieutenant Colonel Jaxo observed during one of these sessions. Their interest patterns suggest they want to understand how our society actually works rather than simply cataloging our military capabilities. That kind of systematic approach implies long-term strategic thinking that goes far beyond immediate tactical concerns. This observation resonated with intelligence analyst Thorne's research into historical precedents for such encounters. Her studies of archaeological records from across the galaxy had revealed similar patterns of systematic observation preceding major civilizational disruptions throughout galactic history. In each case, unknown parties had conducted detailed reconnaissance of established powers before implementing changes that fundamentally altered the existing political and social order. What concerns me most, Thorne explained to the assembled group, is that these historical precedents suggest the observers weren't necessarily hostile in conventional terms. The civilizations that experienced these periods of systematic evaluation often emerged stronger and more unified than before, but only after undergoing transformations that would have been unthinkable under their original social and political structures. As the task force approached its destination in the Outer Rim, Marr found himself contemplating the implications of this historical perspective. If they were indeed encountering representatives of a civilization capable of implementing galactic-scale social engineering, the traditional Imperial responses of military intimidation and political maneuvering might prove not only ineffective, but actively counterproductive. The situation might require forms of leadership and decision-making that transcended conventional Sith training. The first system they investigated, Belkadan, had been the site of multiple reported encounters with unknown vessels. As Harrower's Edge dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge, advanced sensor arrays immediately detected residual energy signatures that matched the descriptions in previous reports. The pattern suggested the mysterious ships used propulsion and power systems that operated on principles fundamentally different from either Imperial or Republic technology. The investigation of Belkadan's outer planets revealed traces of scanning activity so comprehensive and systematic that it resembled an archaeological survey more than military reconnaissance. Atmospheric analysis showed evidence of energy emissions that had penetrated deep into planetary crusts, creating three-dimensional maps of mineral resources, geological structures, and even underground water systems with precision that exceeded anything in Imperial databases. More intriguingly, the scanning pattern suggested the unknown vessels had paid particular attention to signs of intelligent modification of planetary environments. Areas where Imperial colonists had established settlements, mining operations, or communication facilities showed evidence of especially detailed examination. It was as if the observers wanted to understand not just what resources the planets contained, but how Imperial civilization utilized and modified those resources to support its expansion across the galaxy. Captain Zerek's analysis of the energy signatures provided additional pieces to the puzzle. "My lord," he reported to Marr. During their investigation of the system's primary trade station, the propulsion emissions we're detecting suggest these ships can achieve faster-than-light travel without relying on hyperspace lanes. If that's accurate, they possess a degree of technological independence that would allow them to operate anywhere in the galaxy without being constrained by the hyperspace routes that limit our own strategic mobility. This revelation carried profound implications for Imperial defense planning. The entire structure of galactic civilization depended on the predictable patterns of hyperspace travel that connected star systems along established routes. Military strategy, economic planning, and political organization all assumed that space travel required following these natural pathways through dimensions beyond normal space-time. A civilization capable of ignoring these constraints would possess strategic advantages that rendered traditional defensive thinking obsolete. As his task force continued its investigation, moving from system to system along the Outer Rim territories where encounters had been reported, Marr began to understand that he was confronting something that challenged every assumption underlying Imperial civilization. The mysterious observers possessed not only technological superiority, but also a form of strategic patience that suggested planning on timescales that transcended normal political and military considerations. The weight of this realization settled over him as he stood once again at the observation deck of his flagship, now looking out at the starfields of the galactic rim rather than the familiar lights of Dromund Kaas. Somewhere among those distant points of light, representatives of an unknown civilization were conducting observations and making assessments that might determine the future of everything he had sworn to protect. The young Sith Lord, who had departed the Imperial capital with confidence in his training and abilities, was beginning to understand that the challenges ahead would require him to become something far more than traditional Sith education had prepared him to be. 3 weeks into the investigation, Marr's task force made their first breakthrough in the Thanium system, a remote collection of worlds that served as a way station for Imperial merchant vessels traveling to newly acquired territories. The breakthrough came not through sophisticated sensor analysis or complex intelligence operations, but through the simple act of listening to the stories of ordinary Imperial citizens whose lives had been touched by the mysterious encounters. The manager of Thanium Station's primary docking facility, a gruff Corellian named Bren Jack, who had spent 30 years servicing ships from across Imperial space, provided the crucial insight that would reshape their entire understanding of what they were investigating. Jack had witnessed not 1 but 3 separate encounters with the unknown vessels, and his detailed observations as a professional spacer revealed patterns that purely military reports had missed. "The thing that struck me most, Lord Marr," Jack explained, as they stood in the station's observation lounge overlooking the main docking bays, wasn't their ships or their technology, impressive as those were. It was how they interacted with our people. During the second encounter, one of our cargo handlers got caught outside during a routine maintenance cycle when their ship appeared. Instead of ignoring him or treating him as a threat, they waited. They actually adjusted their scanning pattern to avoid interfering with his work. This detail proved more significant than any technical analysis of alien propulsion systems. It suggested that the mysterious observers possessed not only advanced technology, but also a form of ethical consideration that extended to individual Imperial citizens. Such behavior implied a sophisticated understanding of Imperial society that went far beyond what could be gathered through remote observation. Further conversations with station personnel revealed additional evidence of this unexpected consideration. During each encounter, the unknown vessels had taken care to avoid disrupting critical station operations, timing their appearances to minimize impact on cargo transfers, passenger movements, and maintenance activities. Most remarkably, they had twice delayed their departure to avoid creating sensor interference that might have endangered ships attempting to dock during difficult atmospheric conditions. Intelligence analyst Thorne compiled these accounts with growing excitement, recognizing that they represented far more than casual politeness from advanced aliens. "My lord," she reported to Marr during one of their evening analysis sessions, "what we're observing suggests these encounters are being conducted according to ethical guidelines that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of our social structures and individual psychology. This level of cultural sensitivity requires extensive prior study and careful preparation." The implications extended far beyond diplomatic courtesy. If the unknown civilization had already conducted sufficient research to understand Imperial social dynamics at such a detailed level, their current observation activities might represent final preparations for some form of direct contact rather than initial reconnaissance. The systematic nature of their information gathering suggested they were working toward a specific objective that required comprehensive knowledge of Imperial capabilities, limitations, and cultural characteristics. Captain Zerek's tactical analysis supported this interpretation. His detailed study of the energy signatures left behind by the mysterious vessels revealed that their scanning activities had evolved and become more sophisticated over time. Early encounters showed broad-spectrum data collection, but recent incidents demonstrated precisely targeted information gathering that suggested the observers now knew exactly what they were looking for. "Sir," Zarek reported during a secure briefing in Marr's private quarters, "the scanning patterns from the most recent encounters are surgically precise. They're no longer cataloging everything they can detect. Instead, they're collecting specific types of data that relate to our command structures, communication protocols, and resource allocation systems. This suggests they've moved beyond general reconnaissance into detailed preparation for something that requires intimate knowledge of how Imperial society functions at every level." The evidence pointed toward a disturbing conclusion. The mysterious observers weren't simply exploring or conducting academic research. They were preparing for some form of intervention in Imperial affairs that would require them to understand and potentially manipulate the complex systems that kept galactic civilization functioning. The level of preparation they had undertaken suggested an operation of unprecedented scope and ambition. Lieutenant Colonel Jaxo's analysis from an anthropological perspective provided additional context that made the situation even more concerning. Her study of similar patterns in galactic history revealed that such systematic observation typically preceded periods of major civilizational transformation. In each historical case, the observing party had possessed the capability to implement changes on scales that affected entire galactic regions. "Lord Marr," she explained during a private consultation in the ship's archives, "what we're seeing matches the preliminary phases of what xenoanthropologists call civilizational integration events. These are periods when a more advanced society incorporates less advanced ones into their sphere of influence, but not through conventional conquest. Instead, they restructure the target civilization's fundamental organizational principles to create compatibility with their own systems." This analysis suggested that the Empire might be facing something far more complex and potentially transformative than a traditional military threat. If the observers represented a civilization capable of implementing galactic-scale social engineering, conventional Imperial responses would be inadequate at best and potentially disastrous at worst. As Marr's investigation continued, moving deeper into the Outer Rim territories where the encounters had been most frequent, additional evidence emerged that supported these unsettling conclusions. Archaeological surveys of worlds where the mysterious vessels had conducted particularly intensive scanning activities revealed traces of previous civilizations that had vanished under circumstances remarkably similar to current patterns. On the fourth planet of the Cry system, Imperial archaeological teams discovered ruins of a sophisticated urban center that had been abandoned approximately 8 centuries earlier. The city showed no signs of warfare, natural disaster, or gradual decline. Instead, the evidence suggested that its entire population had simply departed over a relatively short period, leaving behind infrastructure and personal possessions that indicated a planned and voluntary evacuation. More disturbing still, analysis of the abandoned structures revealed architectural and technological elements that seemed to blend the original civilization's aesthetic with design principles that matched no known galactic culture. It was as if the departing population had begun adopting new construction techniques and organizational systems during their final years on the planet, gradually transforming their society before ultimately relocating elsewhere. Intelligence analyst Thorne's examination of similar archaeological sites across the Outer Rim revealed a pattern that spanned multiple star systems and several different species. In each case, advanced civilizations had undergone periods of systematic change that culminated in their departure from their original worlds, leaving behind evidence of technological and social evolution that had no apparent source within their original cultural traditions. The pattern is remarkably consistent, Thorne reported during a task force briefing aboard Harrower's Edge. In every case, the transformation process appears to have been voluntary and gradual, taking place over periods ranging from decades to centuries. The departing civilizations weren't conquered or destroyed. They were changed, elevated to new levels of capability and organization, before relocating to unknown destinations. This historical perspective cast the current encounters in a deeply troubling light. If the mysterious observers represented the same forces that had been responsible for these previous civilizational transformations, the Empire might be facing not an enemy to be defeated, but a process of change that would fundamentally alter the nature of Imperial society itself. As Marr contemplated these revelations while standing in his private quarters aboard the flagship, gazing out at the star fields of the Outer Rim, he began to understand that his investigation had uncovered something that transcended conventional categories of threat and opportunity. The force conducting systematic observation of Imperial civilization possessed capabilities and objectives that required entirely new approaches to leadership and decision-making. The young Sith Lord, who had accepted this assignment as a straightforward investigation into unusual reconnaissance activities, now found himself confronting evidence of a galactic-scale phenomenon that challenged every assumption underlying Imperial civilization. The path forward would require wisdom and courage that went far beyond anything taught in Sith academies, demanding that he evolve just as much as the civilizations he was sworn to protect. Upon returning to Imperial space after 6 weeks of investigation, Marr found himself facing pressure from multiple directions to provide definitive answers about the mysterious encounters his task force had documented. The Dark Council demanded explanations that could be translated into actionable policy decisions. Imperial intelligence required threat assessments that could guide resource allocation and defensive planning. Most importantly, the Emperor himself had taken personal interest in reports of unknown vessels operating within territories claimed by his expanding domain. The weight of these expectations, combined with the fragmentary nature of the evidence they had gathered, led Marr to construct what seemed at the time to be a reasonable interpretation of the phenomena they had observed. Working closely with intelligence analyst Thorne and Captain Zirek, he developed a comprehensive briefing that explained the unknown vessels as products of a previously undetected Republic Black project, possibly involving collaboration with non-aligned worlds seeking to gather intelligence about Imperial expansion in the Outer Rim. The theory possessed compelling internal logic. The Republic had demonstrated innovative technological capabilities during the recent war, including experimental hyperspace interdiction systems and advanced stealth technologies that had surprised Imperial military planners on several occasions. The systematic nature of the observation activities fit established patterns of Republic intelligence operations, which typically emphasized comprehensive data collection over dramatic direct action. Most convincingly, the ethical considerations shown by the unknown observers aligned with Republic cultural values regarding individual dignity and civilian protection. Furthermore, several archaeological sites they had investigated showed signs of recent Republic survey activities. Standard markers used by Republic xenoarchaeological teams appeared near locations where the mysterious vessels had conducted particularly intensive scanning operations. Cross-referencing these findings with known Republic exploration schedules revealed gaps that could accommodate covert intelligence gathering missions using technologies not yet deployed in conventional military operations. The Dark Council accepted this assessment with satisfaction that bordered on relief. Unknown alien civilizations represented complications that Imperial doctrines struggled to address, while Republic technological innovations fell within familiar categories of threat that could be countered through established military and political responses. Darth Marr's reputation for thorough analysis and practical judgment lent credibility to conclusions that aligned with what the Council preferred to believe about galactic power dynamics. Imperial military planning immediately shifted to accommodate this new understanding of Republic capabilities. Defense allocations increased for Outer Rim territories. Intelligence operations expanded to monitor Republic technological development, and diplomatic initiatives began exploring ways to limit Republic access to the advanced systems their black projects had apparently produced. The Empire's response demonstrated the efficiency of its command structures when confronting familiar categories of challenge. Yet even as these preparations proceeded, Marr found himself troubled by details that didn't quite fit the elegant theory he had constructed. The precision of the unknown vessel's scanning operations exceeded anything demonstrated by Republic technology, even accounting for theoretical advances in their black projects. The propulsion systems that allowed the mysterious ships to operate independently of established hyperspace routes represented breakthroughs that should have required decades of development and testing before deployment in covert operations. More puzzling still, the historical patterns intelligence analyst Thorne had documented suggested that similar phenomena had occurred during previous eras, when the Republic had possessed neither the technological capability nor the strategic motivation to conduct such sophisticated intelligence operations. The archaeological evidence from abandoned civilizations pointed toward processes that operated on timescales far longer than any political or military organization could maintain, even one as persistent as the Republic. Captain Zarek raised additional concerns during their private debriefings aboard Harrower's Edge. His analysis of energy signatures and propulsion emissions had revealed characteristics that seemed inconsistent with any known technological tradition, including theoretical advances that Republic scientists might have achieved through their most ambitious research programs. The unknown vessels operated according to principles that suggested not incremental improvements over existing technology, but fundamental differences in understanding how energy, matter, and space-time could be manipulated. Lieutenant Colonel Jaxo's anthropological perspective provided perhaps the most troubling counterargument to the Republic Black Project theory. Her study of the systematic observation patterns revealed cultural assumptions and analytical frameworks that seemed alien to Republic intellectual traditions. The unknown observers approached Imperial civilization with forms of scientific curiosity and strategic patience that reflected worldviews fundamentally different from anything documented in Republic academic or military literature. "My lord," she confided during one of their final briefing sessions before returning to Dromund Kaas, "the behavioral patterns we've documented suggest minds that think on scales of centuries rather than decades. The Republic, for all its institutional continuity, operates according to political cycles and military imperatives that require more immediate results from intelligence operations. What we've observed suggests planning that transcends any organizational structure I've encountered in galactic political systems." Despite these concerns, the demands of Imperial administration required definitive conclusions that could guide policy decisions and resource allocations. The Republic Black Project theory provided a framework that satisfied these practical requirements while fitting within existing Imperial understanding of galactic power dynamics. MAJA's official reports emphasized the aspects of their investigation that supported this interpretation, while noting the anomalous details as areas requiring further study. The Emperor's personal response to these briefings demonstrated the complex dynamics that shaped Imperial decision-making at the highest levels. While accepting the Republic Black Project explanation as adequate for immediate planning purposes, he also authorized expanded intelligence operations designed to monitor developments that might indicate more fundamental challenges to Imperial security. This dual approach reflected the wisdom of a ruler who had survived centuries of galactic upheaval by preparing for multiple contingencies while maintaining operational effectiveness. The Dark Council's implementation of defensive measures based on Marr's assessment proceeded with characteristic Imperial efficiency. New patrol schedules increased Imperial Navy presence in Outer Rim territories. Enhanced sensor networks began monitoring for signs of advanced Republic technology, and diplomatic initiatives explored ways to limit Republic access to resources that might support their black projects. Within months, the Empire's response had created a more robust defensive posture that would prove valuable regardless of the true nature of the threats they faced. Yet privately, Marr continued wrestling with the implications of what they had discovered. The archaeological evidence particularly haunted his meditations, suggesting that the phenomena they had observed might represent something that operated on scales beyond conventional political or military categories. The abandoned civilizations they had studied hadn't been conquered or destroyed, but transformed and relocated according to processes that transcended normal historical patterns. The Force itself seemed to whisper warnings that conventional explanations might prove inadequate for the challenges approaching Imperial civilization. During his private meditations aboard Harrow's Edge, as they completed their return journey to Dromund Kaas, Marr experienced visions that suggested vast movements of consciousness and purpose that dwarfed the familiar conflicts between Empire and Republic. These glimpses of cosmic-scale processes left him with growing conviction that their investigation had revealed only the earliest manifestations of changes that would eventually reshape galactic civilization itself. The young Sith Lord, who had departed the Imperial capital months earlier with confidence in his analytical abilities and strategic training, now returned with deeper appreciation for the limits of conventional wisdom. The Republic Black Project theory satisfied immediate administrative requirements and provided frameworks for defensive planning, but it failed to account for evidence that pointed toward phenomena operating according to principles that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of galactic politics and technological development. As Harrow's Edge approached the familiar storm-wracked atmosphere of Dromund Kaas, Marr understood that his first independent command had taught him lessons about leadership that went far beyond what Sith academies could provide. Sometimes the most dangerous challenges were those that masqueraded as familiar problems, and the greatest wisdom lay in maintaining awareness that even the most elegant explanations might prove inadequate when confronting forces that operated beyond the boundaries of conventional understanding. The months following Marr's return to Imperial space marked a period of unprecedented advancement in his political and military career. His handling of the Outer Rim investigation had impressed not only the Dark Council but also key figures within Imperial intelligence and the Navy hierarchy who recognized in him a rare combination of analytical brilliance and practical wisdom. Within a year of completing his first independent command, he found himself appointed to increasingly significant positions within the Imperial administrative structure. His new role as coordinator of Outer Rim security placed him at the nexus of multiple intelligence networks that spanned the Empire's expanding territories. The position granted him access to information flows that had previously been compartmentalized among various Imperial agencies, allowing him to observe patterns and connections that individual departments might miss. More importantly, it provided him with resources and authority sufficient to pursue investigations that transcended conventional organizational boundaries. The office itself, located within the secure levels of the Imperial Citadel on Dromund Kaas, reflected the unique nature of his responsibilities. Advanced holographic displays could present real-time intelligence from across Imperial space, while secure communication arrays provided direct links to field operatives, naval commanders, and diplomatic personnel throughout the galaxy. Ancient Sith artifacts integrated into the chamber's design served not merely as decoration, but as focusing aids that helped him process vast amounts of information while maintaining connection to the deeper currents of the Force. It was from this position that Marr began to perceive the true scope of the phenomena his initial investigation had uncovered. Reports continued flowing in from across Imperial territories, describing encounters with unknown vessels that followed patterns increasingly difficult to reconcile with the Republic Black Project theory he had previously endorsed. The mysterious observers had expanded their activities beyond the Outer Rim, conducting sophisticated reconnaissance operations near core Imperial worlds with audacity that suggested either supreme confidence in their technological superiority or complete indifference to Imperial defensive capabilities. More troubling still, similar reports began arriving from unexpected sources within Republic space. Discrete communications channels that Imperial intelligence maintained with pragmatic elements in Republic institutions revealed that their former enemies were experiencing identical phenomena. Unknown vessels were conducting systematic observation of Republic military installations, trade networks, and civilian infrastructure with the same methodical precision that had characterized their activities within Imperial territory. The implications of this parallel activity forced Marr to confront the inadequacy of his earlier conclusions. If the mysterious observers were indeed products of Republic Black projects, they would hardly waste resources conducting reconnaissance of their own civilization's capabilities. The Republic possessed detailed knowledge of their own military assets, economic systems, and social structures without requiring external observation to gather such information. Intelligence analyst Thorne, now permanently assigned to his expanded staff, provided additional evidence that challenged conventional explanations. Her ongoing analysis of archaeological data from worlds where the unknown vessels had conducted intensive operations revealed patterns that extended far beyond the time frame of any conceivable Republic technological development program. Carbon dating of artifacts found at these sites suggested that similar observation activities had been occurring intermittently for centuries, predating the Republic's existence as an organized political entity. Lord Marr, she reported during one of their regular briefing sessions, the historical evidence indicates that what we're observing represents continuity of purpose and methodology that transcends normal organizational lifespans. The Republic has existed for approximately 25,000 years, but these phenomena show consistent characteristics across archaeological layers that extend back at least 50,000 years. Whatever we're dealing with operates according to planning horizons that dwarf any known political or military institution. This temporal perspective transformed understanding of the systematic observations from contemporary intelligence operations into manifestations of processes that operated on geological timescales. The unknown civilization conducting these activities possessed not only advanced technology, but also forms of institutional continuity that suggested radically different approaches to social organization and strategic planning. Captain Zurich, now serving as Marr's primary military advisor, contributed tactical analyses that reinforced these unsettling conclusions. His expanded access to Imperial Navy sensor data had revealed that the mysterious vessels demonstrated capabilities that seemed to improve over time, as if their operators were conducting not just reconnaissance, but also technological research using Imperial civilization as a testing ground for their systems and methods. "Sir," Jurek explained during a secure briefing in Marr's private chambers, The propulsion signatures we're detecting show progressive sophistication that suggests active development rather than deployment of mature technology. It's as if they're using their observation activities as opportunities to test and refine systems that were already far in advance of anything we possess. The implications for their underlying technological base are staggering. This evidence painted a picture of a civilization that treated galactic politics as a form of controlled experiment, systematically studying the development of younger species while simultaneously advancing their own capabilities through practical application of theoretical principles. The level of technological and social development required to sustain such long-term research programs suggested powers that operated on scales beyond anything documented in galactic history. Lieutenant Colonel Jaxo's anthropological research provided cultural context that made these technological revelations even more concerning. Her analysis of the systematic observation patterns revealed evidence of psychological and sociological understanding that could only have been acquired through extensive prior study of multiple civilizations. The unknown observers demonstrated familiarity with Imperial psychology, Republican democratic processes, and various alien cultural frameworks that indicated comprehensive academic preparation spanning numerous species and political systems. "My lord," she reported during one of their collaborative analysis sessions, "what we're seeing suggests a civilization that has made a science of studying how other species develop technology, social organization, and political structures. Their observation methods are precisely calibrated to gather data about processes that take centuries or millennia to unfold. This implies research programs that treat entire civilizations as subjects for long-term academic inquiry." The weight of these revelations began affecting Marr's approach to his broader responsibilities within Imperial administration. His daily routine increasingly included periods of deep meditation designed not just to maintain connection with the dark side of the Force, but to process information and implications that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of galactic civilization. The Force itself seemed to respond to his expanding awareness, providing insights that transcended normal analytical methods. During these meditative sessions conducted in the private chambers adjacent to his office, Marr experienced visions that suggested vast movements of consciousness and purpose operating behind the visible events of galactic politics. The familiar conflicts between Empire and Republic appeared as surface phenomena overlaying deeper currents of change that flowed according to patterns established by influences beyond normal historical forces. The ancient Sith artifacts, integrated into his office chambers, began resonating with frequencies that reflected these deeper currents, their crystalline structures pulsing with energies that seemed to originate from sources far beyond the traditional boundaries of dark side power. These responses suggested that even the most sophisticated Force-sensitive traditions possessed only partial understanding of the cosmic forces that shaped galactic development. As weeks turned to months, Marr's expanding awareness of the true scope of the phenomena they were investigating began influencing his interactions with other Imperial leaders. During Dark Council sessions, he found himself advocating for defensive preparations that went beyond conventional military responses to encompass social and psychological resilience that might be required if Imperial civilization faced challenges that transcended normal categories of threat. His colleagues initially interpreted these recommendations as products of excessive caution born from his exposure to classified intelligence about Republic technological advances. However, those council members who possessed the greatest sensitivity to Force currents began recognizing that Marr's concerns reflected awareness of disturbances that extended far beyond political or military considerations into realms that touched the fundamental nature of galactic existence. The realization that conventional Imperial responses might prove inadequate for the challenges approaching civilized space led Marr to begin developing new forms of strategic thinking that incorporated awareness of cosmic-scale processes into practical administrative and military planning. This evolution in his intellectual approach would prove crucial as events continued unfolding toward revelations that would reshape understanding of humanity's place within the broader tapestry of galactic consciousness. The transformation in Marr's understanding accelerated dramatically when Imperial deep space reconnaissance missions began returning with intelligence that shattered every remaining assumption about the scope and nature of the phenomena they were investigating. 3 separate long-range exploration fleets operating in different sectors of the unknown regions beyond the galactic rim had encountered evidence of massive construction projects that dwarfed anything previously documented in galactic history. The first reports arrived through encrypted channels from Admiral Vraces, commander of the exploration vessel Ascendant, which had been conducting standard survey operations in the Lehon sector. What her crew discovered there would have seemed impossible if not for the comprehensive sensor logs and holographic documentation that accompanied their transmissions. An entire star system had been artificially modified to serve as some form of industrial complex, with planets relocated from their natural orbits and connected by engineering structures visible from interstellar distances. Lord Marr, Admiral Vries reported through secure holocom from her position at the edge of the Lehon system. What we're observing represents engineering capabilities that transcend anything in our theoretical frameworks. The primary planet appears to have been converted into a manufacturing facility with a surface area equivalent to thousands of standard industrial worlds. The energy emissions alone suggest power generation systems that could supply entire sectors of Imperial space. The scale of construction indicated not just advanced technology, but access to resources and organizational capabilities that exceeded the combined industrial capacity of Empire and Republic by orders of magnitude. More disturbing still, the architectural principles governing these massive installations followed aesthetic and functional designs that matched no known galactic culture, suggesting origins that lay entirely outside familiar civilizational traditions. Captain Reyes, commanding the reconnaissance frigate Eternal Vigilance, provided equally startling intelligence from the Copero sector. Her survey team had discovered what appeared to be an abandoned military facility built into the structure of an entire moon, complete with docking facilities designed to service fleets of vessels whose configurations matched the unknown ships that had been conducting systematic observation of Imperial space. The facility showed signs of recent occupation despite its current abandonment, with power systems still functioning and environmental controls maintaining atmospheric conditions suitable for human habitation. Most intriguingly, the computer systems remained partially active, though their interfaces utilized languages and symbolic systems that bore no resemblance to any documented galactic linguistic tradition. Intelligence analyst Thorne, working with teams of xenolinguists and archaeologists, made initial progress in deciphering fragments of the alien databases. What they discovered provided the first direct evidence of the systematic nature of the observations Imperial space had been experiencing. The databases contained detailed files on hundreds of different species and civilizations, complete with assessments of their technological capabilities, social structures, and potential for what the files termed integration readiness. "My lord," Thorne reported during an emergency briefing convened in Marr's secure chambers, "the databases we've partially decoded appear to be evaluation reports spanning multiple galactic regions and time periods. The entries covering Imperial civilization are remarkably comprehensive, including accurate assessments of our military capabilities, economic systems, and even psychological profiles of individual Dark Council members. The level of detail suggests surveillance operations far more extensive than anything we previously detected." The Imperial entry within these alien databases proved particularly revealing. The assessment described Imperial civilization as possessing moderate integration potential based on existing hierarchical social structures and demonstrated capacity for rapid technological adaptation. Most concerning, the evaluation included projections about optimal timing for what it termed preliminary contact phases, with dates that corresponded closely to the recent increase in observation activities. The databases also contained entries for Republic civilization that were equally detailed and disturbingly accurate. The alien evaluators had correctly identified key weaknesses in Republic democratic institutions while recognizing strengths in their technological innovation and diplomatic flexibility. The assessment concluded that Republic systems would require extensive preparation periods before achieving integration readiness, but noted their potential value as willing participants in transitional governance structures. Commander Thex of the deep space reconnaissance vessel Dark Honor contributed the most unsettling discovery of all. Her team had located what appeared to be a monitoring station, positioned at the edge of galactic space, apparently designed to observe and analyze the development of entire civilizations from a position of complete concealment. The station's sensor arrays possessed resolution capabilities that could track individual starships across multiple sectors, while simultaneously monitoring communication traffic, economic flows, and social developments throughout both Imperial and Republic territories. The monitoring station's databanks contained intelligence that spanned centuries of galactic history, including detailed records of events that had shaped the development of both major galactic powers. The alien observers had been documenting everything from individual military campaigns to broader social and technological trends, building comprehensive models of how galactic civilization evolved under different political and economic pressures. Lord Marr, Commander Thex reported from her position near the monitoring station. The scope of their information gathering suggests they've been studying our civilization for far longer than we initially suspected. Their records include accurate descriptions of historical events that predate our own archives in some cases. They've been watching us develop from primitive interstellar travel to our current technological capabilities, documenting every major milestone along the way. The implications of these discoveries forced Marr to confront the reality that Imperial civilization existed within a larger context that Imperial leadership had never suspected. The systematic observations, the massive construction projects, and the comprehensive databases all pointed toward the existence of a galactic-scale civilization that treated younger species like the Empire and Republic as subjects for long-term academic and possibly practical research. More troubling still, the evidence suggested that this advanced civilization was preparing to transition from passive observation to active intervention. The databases contained detailed plans for what they termed integration protocols, which appeared to be systematic methods for incorporating younger civilizations into their broader organizational structures while preserving selected aspects of their original cultures and institutions. The integration protocols described processes that bore disturbing similarities to the historical patterns intelligence analyst Thorne had documented at archaeological sites throughout Imperial space. The abandoned civilizations they had studied hadn't been conquered in conventional military terms, but had apparently undergone systematic transformation that culminated in their relocation to unknown destinations where they could contribute to the advanced civilization's expanding capabilities. During his private meditations, as Marr struggled to process the implications of these revelations, the Force provided insights that suggested even greater complexity to the situation they were confronting. The advanced civilization conducting these observations possessed not only superior technology and organizational capabilities, but also forms of connection to cosmic forces that transcended conventional understanding of light and dark sides of the Force. The visions he experienced during deep meditation suggested that the systematic observations were preliminary phases of processes that operated on scales beyond individual planets or star systems, encompassing entire galactic regions and potentially extending to other galaxies entirely. The scope of planning and preparation indicated purposes that went far beyond anything conceivable within normal political or military frameworks. As reports continued arriving from reconnaissance missions throughout the unknown regions, Ma began understanding that Imperial civilization faced challenges that would require responses transcending every category of threat. Imperial doctrine had anticipated the conventional military and political tools that had served the Empire well in conflicts with the Republic would prove inadequate when confronting a civilization that possessed the capability to relocate entire species across galactic distances while maintaining their cultural and technological development within new organizational frameworks. The weight of this knowledge settled over him like the eternal storms of Dromund Kaas, constant and inescapable. The young Sith Lord who had once believed that superior strategy and force mastery could overcome any obstacle now found himself confronting evidence of powers that made such confidence seem naive. The path forward would require wisdom and adaptability that went far beyond anything traditional Sith training could provide. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source deep within the Imperial archives, buried among records so ancient and obscure that only the most dedicated historians had examined them in recent centuries. Keeper Volan, the elderly Sith archivist whose dedication to preserving Imperial knowledge bordered on obsession, contacted Ma with trembling urgency about documents he had discovered while researching the alien databases recovered from the Unknown Regions monitoring station. The documents in question were fragments of records from the original Sith Empire, predating the Great Hyperspace War by several centuries. Written in archaic Sith script that required specialized linguistic expertise to decipher, they described encounters with what the ancient texts called the Eternal Watchers, who appeared periodically throughout galactic history to observe and evaluate developing civilizations. According to these ancient accounts, the Eternal Watchers possessed technologies and capabilities that transcended normal understanding of space, time, and consciousness itself. They could manipulate reality at fundamental levels, creating pocket dimensions where entire civilizations could be preserved and studied while appearing to have vanished from normal galactic space. Most disturbing of all, the records suggested that the Watchers viewed organic consciousness as a form of resource to be cultivated, harvested, and ultimately incorporated into their own expanding collective awareness. Keeper Volan's translation work, conducted in the deepest vaults of the Imperial archives, surrounded by security measures that rivaled those protecting the Emperor's personal chambers, revealed details that connected directly to the contemporary phenomena Ma had been investigating. The ancient Sith who authored these records described observation patterns, technological signatures, and behavioral characteristics that matched perfectly with intelligence gathered by modern Imperial reconnaissance missions. Lord Ma, Keeper Volan explained during their clandestine meeting in the archive vaults, his voice barely above a whisper, despite the chamber's isolation. These texts suggest that what we're experiencing represents the culmination of observation cycles that span multiple galactic eras. The Eternal Watchers don't simply study civilizations randomly. They guide their development through carefully orchestrated historical events, steering technological and social evolution towards specific endpoints that serve their larger purposes. The implication struck Ma with the force of a physical blow. If these ancient records were accurate, then major events throughout galactic history, including the Great Hyperspace War, the Mandalorian Wars, and even the recent conflict between Empire and Republic, might have been influenced or orchestrated by external forces pursuing objectives that transcended normal political or military goals. Further examination of the archival materials revealed references to a central figure among the Eternal Watchers, described in the ancient texts as the Immortal Emperor, who possessed the ability to transfer his consciousness between different physical forms while maintaining perfect continuity of memory and purpose across centuries or millennia. This entity apparently served as the primary coordinator for the systematic evaluation and integration of younger civilizations into the Watcher's expanding domain. The ancient records describe the Immortal Emperor as possessing mastery over both light and dark aspects of the Force, while simultaneously transcending traditional categories of Force sensitivity entirely. His power derived not from emotional states like passion or serenity, but from fundamental understanding of consciousness itself as a manipulable aspect of reality. This allowed him to influence the development of entire species through subtle manipulations of their cultural, technological, and spiritual evolution. Intelligence analyst Thorne, working with teams of xenolinguists and ancient historians, made additional discoveries that corroborated these archival findings. Cross-referencing the Sith records with databases recovered from the alien monitoring station revealed consistent patterns of terminology and conceptual frameworks that suggested direct continuity between ancient and contemporary manifestations of the same phenomena. "My lord," Thorne reported, during an emergency session in Marr's private chambers, the linguistic analysis indicates that the alien databases use evolved forms of the same symbolic systems described in the ancient Sith records. We're not dealing with different civilizations that happen to share similar capabilities. We're confronting the same entities that have been conducting these operations for thousands of years, possibly much longer. The databases recovered from the monitoring station contained additional information that had initially been dismissed as corrupted data, but now revealed itself to be references to what the aliens termed the Eternal Throne. This appeared to be both a physical location and a conceptual framework that served as the nexus for their galactic-scale operations. The throne existed simultaneously across multiple dimensions of space-time, allowing its occupant to observe and influence events throughout the galaxy while remaining essentially invisible to conventional detection methods. Captain Zarek's analysis of energy signatures detected by deep space reconnaissance missions provided technical confirmation of these unsettling revelations. The propulsion and power systems used by the alien vessels operated according to principles that suggested direct manipulation of dimensional boundaries rather than conventional applications of hyperspace physics. This capability would allow them to appear and disappear from normal space-time while maintaining perfect mobility throughout the galaxy. "Sir," Zarek reported during a secure briefing aboard his personal vessel, "the energy patterns we're detecting indicate that these ships don't travel through hyperspace in any conventional sense. They appear to phase between different dimensional layers of reality itself. The implications for our defensive planning are staggering. Conventional interdiction fields and sensor networks would be completely ineffective against opponents who can operate outside normal space-time parameters." Lieutenant Colonel Jaxo's anthropological research provided cultural context that made these technical revelations even more alarming. Her analysis of the integration protocols discovered in the alien databases revealed systematic methods for transforming entire civilizations while preserving their essential characteristics within new organizational frameworks. The process appeared designed to maintain cultural diversity while creating unified purpose and coordinated action across multiple species and technological levels. The integration protocols described preliminary phases that involved systematic observation and evaluation, followed by carefully orchestrated historical events designed to accelerate social and technological development along predetermined pathways. The final phases involved direct contact and negotiation with civilizational leaders, offering choices between voluntary integration and alternatives that the protocols described euphemistically as dimensional preservation. "My lord," Jaxo explained during their analysis session, "what we're seeing represents a sophisticated approach to galactic governance that treats individual civilizations as components in a larger system. The Eternal Watchers don't seek to destroy or dominate other species in conventional terms. Instead, they appear to be building a meta-civilization that incorporates the strengths and capabilities of multiple different cultures while maintaining central coordination through the Eternal Throne." The weight of these discoveries forced Marr to confront the possibility that Imperial civilization faced not an enemy to be defeated, but a transformation process that might be both inevitable and potentially beneficial depending on how Imperial leadership chose to respond. The ancient records suggested that civilizations that cooperated with the integration process often emerged stronger and more capable than before, while those that resisted faced consequences that ranged from technological stagnation to complete dimensional isolation. During his private meditations as Marr struggled to process the implications of these revelations, the Force provided visions that suggested the Eternal Watcher's activities represented part of natural cosmic cycles that operated on scales beyond individual galactic communities. The integration processes they conducted appeared designed to prevent younger civilizations from destroying themselves through internal conflicts, while preparing them to participate in challenges that spanned multiple galaxies and dimensions of existence. These visions revealed glimpses of vast networks of consciousness that extended across cosmic distances, connecting civilizations that had undergone successful integration into collaborative relationships that transcended normal limitations of space and time. The Eternal Throne served as a nexus for these networks, allowing coordinated responses to threats and opportunities that operated on scales incomprehensible to civilizations confined to single galactic regions. The realization that Imperial civilization existed within this larger cosmic context transformed Marr's understanding of his responsibilities as a Sith Lord and Imperial leader. Traditional concerns about political advancement and military victory seemed insignificant compared to questions about how best to prepare Imperial society for challenges that might determine not just their immediate survival, but their role in cosmic processes that spanned multiple galactic eras. As reports continued arriving from reconnaissance missions throughout the unknown regions, Marr began understanding that the systematic observations Imperial space had been experiencing represented preliminary phases of contact that would soon transition into direct communication between the Eternal Throne and Imperial leadership. The choices made during those communications would determine whether Imperial civilization joined the expanding meta-civilization as willing participants or faced alternatives that might preserve their essential characteristics while limiting their ability to influence their own development. The ancient Sith Lord, who had trained him to channel passion into power, could never have imagined challenges that required transcending the very nature of individual consciousness itself. Yet as Marr contemplated the visions provided by the Force and the evidence gathered by Imperial intelligence operations, he began to understand that protecting Imperial civilization might require him to become something that neither Sith nor Jedi traditions had anticipated. The moment of ultimate revelation arrived through the most mundane of circumstances. A routine intelligence briefing from Imperial Deep Space Reconnaissance suddenly erupted into crisis when Admiral Vries transmitted an emergency signal from the Lamont sector, her voice carrying barely controlled terror, as she reported direct contact with representatives of the civilization they had been investigating for months. Lord Marr, her transmission crackled through encrypted channels, the signal distorted by energy fields that Imperial technology couldn't adequately compensate for. We've been contacted by entities claiming to represent what they call the Eternal Empire of Zakul. They're requesting immediate communication with Imperial leadership, specifically asking for you by name and title, my lord. They know details about our investigation that we never transmitted through any communication channels. The representatives of this Eternal Empire had approached Admiral Vries' task force with confidence that bordered on casual indifference to Imperial military capability. Their vessels, which matched the configurations documented during months of mysterious encounters, simply materialized within the Imperial formation without triggering any defensive systems. The technology required for such precise dimensional manipulation exceeded Imperial understanding by margins that rendered conventional military responses meaningless. More disturbing still, the alien representatives demonstrated knowledge of Imperial political structures, military protocols, and individual personnel records that could only have been gathered through surveillance operations far more comprehensive than anything previously detected. They addressed Admiral Verses by her full name and service history, referenced classified details about Imperial strategic planning, and displayed familiarity with internal Dark Council deliberations that should have been impossible for any external observer to access. The message they transmitted for Marr personally carried implications that shattered every remaining assumption about the nature of galactic civilization. The representative speaking for the Eternal Empire identified himself as Valkorion, Emperor of Zakuul and coordinator of what he termed civilizational integration protocols throughout their galactic region. His appearance in the holographic transmission suggested humanoid characteristics, but there was something in his bearing and manner of speaking that implied consciousness operating on scales beyond normal individual awareness. Lord Marr of the Sith Empire, Valkorion's message began, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate directly with Force-sensitive perception. Your investigation of our preliminary observation activities has demonstrated precisely the qualities of analytical intelligence and strategic wisdom that our evaluation protocols identified in your psychological profile. The time has arrived for direct communication between our civilizations regarding the integration opportunities available to Imperial society. The content of Valkorion's message revealed the true scope of the systematic observations Imperial space had been experiencing. The Eternal Empire of Zakuul represented not just another galactic power, but a meta-civilization that incorporated hundreds of different species and technological traditions into unified organizational structures spanning multiple galactic regions. Their capabilities included not only dimensional manipulation and consciousness transfer, but also systematic control over historical development that allowed them to guide the evolution of younger civilizations according to predetermined objectives. The integration opportunities Valkorion referenced weren't negotiations between equal powers, but invitations for Imperial civilization to join existing networks of consciousness and capability that transcended normal limitations of space, time, and individual awareness. The process would preserve essential Imperial characteristics while incorporating Imperial knowledge and capabilities into broader collaborative frameworks that operated across cosmic scales. Intelligence analyst Thorne's immediate analysis of Valkorion's transmission revealed linguistic and conceptual elements that connected directly to the ancient Sith records they had been studying. The terminology and philosophical frameworks used by the Eternal Emperor matched perfectly with descriptions of the Immortal Emperor found in archival materials dating back millennia. The entity communicating with Imperial leadership appeared to be the same consciousness that ancient Sith had encountered during previous historical periods. "My lord," Thorne reported during an emergency briefing session, "comparative analysis indicates that Valkorion represents continuity of consciousness spanning at least several thousand years, possibly much longer. The psychological patterns and intellectual frameworks he demonstrates suggest individual awareness that has been accumulating knowledge and experience across multiple historical eras. We're not dealing with a conventional political leader, but with something that transcends normal categories of individual consciousness." Captain Zerek's technical analysis of the transmission methods used by Valkorion's message provided additional evidence of capabilities that operated beyond conventional understanding of communication technology. The holographic projection had appeared simultaneously across multiple Imperial facilities without utilizing any detectable transmission medium, suggesting direct manipulation of spacetime that allowed instantaneous coordination across galactic distances. The implications extended far beyond Imperial military planning into questions about the fundamental nature of consciousness, identity, and civilizational development. If Valkorion represented genuine continuity of individual awareness across millennia, and if the Eternal Empire possessed systematic methods for preserving and expanding consciousness beyond normal biological limitations, then the integration opportunities they offered might represent access to forms of existence that transcended every assumption underlying Imperial society. Lieutenant Colonel Jax's anthropological perspective provided crucial context for understanding the cultural implications of Valkorian's offer. Her research into the historical patterns associated with civilizational integration suggested that species that joined the Eternal Empire's meta-civilization typically retained their essential characteristics while gaining capabilities that allowed them to participate in cosmic-scale activities that were impossible for isolated civilizations. "My lord," Jaxo explained, during their analysis of Valkorian's message, the integration process appears designed to enhance rather than replace existing cultural and technological capabilities. Species that have undergone integration maintain their distinctive approaches to science, philosophy, and social organization, while gaining access to knowledge and resources that allow them to transcend limitations that previously constrained their development. The archaeological evidence they had gathered from abandoned worlds throughout Imperial space suddenly acquired new significance as examples of voluntary integration rather than conquest or destruction. The civilizations that had departed their original worlds had likely joined the Eternal Empire's expanding networks, relocating to dimensional spaces where their development could continue under conditions that transcended normal environmental and resource limitations. During his private meditations following the receipt of Valkorian's message, Marr experienced visions that provided glimpses of the cosmic-scale processes the Eternal Empire coordinated. The Force revealed vast networks of consciousness spanning multiple galactic regions, collaborative relationships between species whose capabilities complemented each other in ways that created synergistic effects beyond the sum of their individual contributions. These visions suggested that the Eternal Empire's activities represented natural evolution of consciousness itself toward forms of organization and capability that could address challenges operating on cosmic scales. Individual civilizations, regardless of their internal capabilities, faced limitations that prevented them from participating effectively in processes that spanned multiple galaxies and dimensions of existence. The integration opportunities Valkorian offered represented invitations to transcend these limitations while preserving the essential characteristics that made each civilization unique and valuable. The process appeared designed to create diversity within unity, allowing multiple different approaches to consciousness and capability to contribute to collaborative efforts that no single species could accomplish independently. Yet the visions also reveal darker implications of rejecting integration opportunities. Civilizations that chose isolation faced increasingly difficult challenges as cosmic processes continued evolving around them. While the Eternal Empire didn't appear to practice conventional conquest, species that refused integration found themselves progressively excluded from developmental opportunities that required collaborative participation. The choice facing Imperial civilization represented more than political or military decisions about alliance and opposition. The fundamental question was whether Imperial society would choose to preserve its current characteristics within narrow limitations or risk transformation that might lead to capabilities and opportunities beyond anything their current development could achieve. As Marr contemplated the implications of Valkorian's message, he understood that his role in Imperial leadership had evolved beyond traditional categories of military command or political administration. The decisions he made regarding the Eternal Empire's integration offer would determine not just Imperial survival, but the nature of consciousness itself for millions of Imperial citizens across hundreds of worlds. The weight of such responsibility exceeded anything Sith training had prepared him to handle. Yet, the Force itself seemed to provide guidance that transcended normal light and dark side categories, suggesting approaches to leadership that drew strength from unity rather than domination, from protection rather than conquest, from service to cosmic purpose rather than advancement of individual will. The young Sith Lord, who had begun his career seeking to protect Imperial civilization through superior strategy and Force mastery, now found himself confronting opportunities and responsibilities that required him to transcend the very nature of Sith identity itself. The path forward would demand wisdom that synthesized every tradition of consciousness and capability while creating something unprecedented in galactic history. The revelation of Valkorian's true nature and the Eternal Empire's cosmic scope forced Marr to confront a sobering reality about Imperial preparedness for the challenges they faced. Traditional Sith approaches to crisis management, which emphasized individual strength and hierarchical command structures, proved inadequate when dealing with entities that operated across multiple dimensions of consciousness and possessed capabilities that transcended normal understanding of power itself. Recognizing that the decisions ahead would affect the fate of billions of Imperial citizens across hundreds of worlds, Marr made a choice that defied every convention of Sith leadership. Rather than attempting to handle the situation through established Dark Council procedures or Imperial military channels, he began quietly reaching out to individuals whose wisdom and capabilities might contribute to understanding challenges that no single mind could fully comprehend. His first contact was with Keeper Volan, the elderly archivist whose discovery of ancient Sith records had provided crucial insights into the historical patterns underlying their current situation. The aged scholar's dedication to preserving and understanding Imperial knowledge had given him perspectives on galactic history that transcended the political and military concerns that typically dominated Dark Council deliberations. Meeting in the deepest vaults of the Imperial archives, surrounded by holocrons and manuscripts that preserved the accumulated wisdom of countless previous generations, Marr and Keeper Volan began a collaboration that would have seemed impossible under normal circumstances. The pragmatic young Sith Lord and the scholarly archivist worked together to synthesize ancient knowledge with contemporary intelligence, seeking patterns and precedents that might guide Imperial responses to unprecedented challenges. Lord Marr, Keeper Volan observed, during one of their lengthy research sessions, his voice carrying the weight of decades spent studying the rise and fall of galactic civilizations. The historical records suggest that periods of contact with transcendent consciousness represent natural evolutionary phases in civilizational development. Species that successfully navigate these transitions often emerge with capabilities that allow them to participate in cosmic processes previously beyond their comprehension. The archival materials revealed that the ancient Sith Empire had faced similar choices during previous encounters with the entities they termed Eternal Watchers. In each case, the decisions made by civilizational leaders had determined whether their societies evolved toward greater complexity and capability or became isolated within developmental limitations that eventually proved unsustainable. Marr's second crucial ally emerged from an unexpected quarter of Imperial society. Master Corran, an elderly Sith whose unconventional interpretation of dark side philosophy had kept him at the margins of mainstream Imperial thought, possessed insights into the nature of consciousness and force mastery that proved invaluable when contemplating integration with entities that operated beyond normal categories of individual awareness. Unlike most Sith Lords, who viewed the dark side primarily as a tool for personal empowerment and political advancement, Master Corran had spent decades exploring how force sensitivity might serve purposes that transcended individual consciousness entirely. His meditative practices incorporated techniques drawn from multiple galactic traditions, creating approaches to force mastery that emphasized unity rather than domination. Young Marr, Master Corran explained, during their private discussions in his secluded meditation chambers, the Force itself suggests that consciousness represents a collaborative phenomenon rather than purely individual experience. The entities you have encountered appear to understand this principle in ways that allow them to coordinate awareness across scales that span galactic regions and historical eras. These conversations provided Marr with conceptual frameworks that helped him understand how integration with the Eternal Empire might preserve essential Imperial characteristics while enabling participation in forms of consciousness that operated beyond normal limitations of space and time. The process wouldn't require abandoning Sith identity, but rather expanding it to encompass responsibilities and capabilities that served cosmic purposes. Intelligence analyst Thorne's continued research into the databases recovered from alien monitoring stations revealed additional information about the integration processes that had been successfully completed by hundreds of other civilizations throughout galactic history. The records described systematic methods for preserving cultural distinctiveness while enabling collaborative participation in projects that required coordinated effort across multiple species and technological traditions. My Lord, Thorne reported during one of their regular analysis sessions, the integration protocols we've studied appear designed to enhance existing capabilities rather than replace them with standardized alternatives. Civilizations that join the Eternal Empire's networks retain their unique approaches to science, philosophy, and social organization, while gaining access to knowledge and resources that allow them to transcend previous developmental limitations. The evidence suggested that integration represented opportunity rather than threat, provided that Imperial leadership approached the process with wisdom that balanced preservation of essential characteristics with willingness to evolve beyond current constraints. The key lay in understanding which aspects of Imperial civilization were truly fundamental and which represented limitations that could be transcended without losing Imperial identity itself. Captain Zarek's technical analysis contributed practical perspectives on how integration might affect Imperial military and economic capabilities. His research indicated that civilizations joining the Eternal Empire typically gained access to technologies and organizational methods that dramatically enhanced their ability to protect their citizens and expand their beneficial influence throughout galactic space. Sir, Zarek explained during a secure briefing in Mar's private chambers, the technological capabilities demonstrated by integrated civilizations suggest that joining the Eternal Empire's networks provides access to resources and knowledge that could allow Imperial society to achieve objectives we currently consider impossible. The defensive and productive capabilities alone would transform our ability to protect and provide for Imperial citizens across hundreds of worlds. Lieutenant Colonel Jaxo's anthropological research provided crucial insights into how integration processes affected individual consciousness and social relationships within participating civilizations. Her studies indicated that successful integration preserved personal identity while expanding awareness in ways that enhanced rather than diminished individual capabilities and satisfaction. The testimonials she had uncovered from species that had undergone integration described experiences of expanded consciousness that allowed individuals to maintain their distinctive personalities while gaining access to collaborative relationships and shared knowledge that enriched their understanding of themselves and their universe. The process appeared to offer fulfillment of individual potential rather than suppression of personal characteristics. My Lord Jaxo reported during their comprehensive review of integration outcomes. The evidence suggests that individuals who participate in integrated civilizations typically experience enhanced rather than diminished personal autonomy. The expanded awareness and collaborative capabilities they gain appear to strengthen their ability to pursue individual interests while contributing to collective purposes that serve everyone's development. During his private meditations, as Marr contemplated the accumulated wisdom from his diverse consultations, the Force provided visions that revealed the cosmic context within which the integration opportunity existed. The images showed vast networks of consciousness spanning multiple galactic regions, collaborative efforts to address challenges that threatened entire cosmic communities, and evolutionary processes that were guiding the development of consciousness itself toward forms of organization and capability that could address threats and opportunities operating on previously inconceivable scales. These visions suggested that the choice facing Imperial civilization represented participation in natural evolutionary processes rather than submission to external control. The integration opportunities offered by the Eternal Empire appeared to be invitations to join cosmic community rather than demands for political subordination. The realization that Imperial survival and development might depend on transcending traditional boundaries between individual and collective consciousness challenged every assumption underlying Sith philosophy and Imperial political organization. Yet the evidence consistently indicated that such transcendence enhanced rather than diminished the capabilities and satisfaction of participating individuals and civilizations. As Marr prepared to present his findings to the Dark Council, and ultimately to the Emperor himself, he understood that the wisdom he had gathered pointed toward choices that would transform not just Imperial society, but his own understanding of what it meant to serve the dark side of the Force. The path forward would require courage to embrace opportunities that transcended every category of experience that Imperial civilization had previously encountered. The chamber where the Dark Council convened for emergency sessions had witnessed countless moments of Imperial decision-making throughout its history, but never before had its ancient walls enclosed deliberations about the fundamental nature of galactic civilization itself. As Marr prepared to present his findings to the assembled council members, the weight of accumulated evidence pressed against his consciousness like the eternal storms that raged above Dromund Kaas. The presentation itself required careful orchestration to avoid triggering the defensive reactions that typically characterized Sith responses to challenges beyond their immediate understanding. Rather than beginning with the most startling revelations about Valkorion and the Eternal Empire, Marr structured his briefing to guide the Council through the same investigative journey that had led him to his current conclusions. He began with the routine intelligence reports that had initiated his investigation months earlier, methodically building the case for systematic observation of Imperial space by unknown entities. The Council members, accustomed to processing military and political intelligence, followed his analysis with growing interest as the scope and sophistication of the surveillance activities became apparent. Darth Ravage, whose aggressive temperament usually led him to favor immediate military responses to perceived threats, found himself grudgingly impressed by the methodical approach Valkorion's forces had demonstrated. This level of systematic preparation suggests enemies worthy of respect rather than contempt, he observed during a pause in Marr's presentation. Their patience and thoroughness indicate strategic thinking that operates on scales we rarely encounter. The revelation of the massive construction projects discovered by Imperial reconnaissance missions shifted the Council's attention from defensive concerns to questions about the technological and organizational capabilities required for such undertakings. The engineering achievements documented in the unknown regions exceeded anything in Imperial experience by margins that made conventional military planning seem inadequate. Darth Marr, whose scientific background provided technical perspectives often lacking in council deliberations, recognized the implications immediately. The energy requirements alone for relocating entire planets suggest access to power sources that transcend our current theoretical frameworks, he noted, with barely concealed fascination. Whatever civilization created these installations operates according to physical principles we don't yet understand. When Marr presented the evidence from ancient Sith archives connecting current phenomena to historical patterns spanning millennia, the Council's atmosphere shifted from analytical interest to profound unease. The possibility that major events throughout galactic history had been influenced by external forces challenged fundamental assumptions about Imperial autonomy and self-determination. Darth Jedi, whose expertise in intelligence operations made him acutely sensitive to evidence of systematic manipulation, grasped the implications with disturbing clarity. If these historical patterns are accurate, then our expansion, our conflicts with the Republic, even our current political structures might represent responses to influences we never suspected, he observed, his voice carrying undertones of anger at the possibility of Imperial leadership having been unknowingly manipulated. The presentation of Valkorion's direct communication created silence in the council chambers that stretched beyond normal deliberative pauses into something approaching existential contemplation. The Emperor of Zakuul's message, with its casual demonstration of comprehensive knowledge about Imperial society and its invitation to join cosmic-scale collaborative networks, represented challenges that transcended every category of threat or opportunity Imperial doctrine had anticipated. As the implications settled over the assembled Sith Lords, individual reactions revealed the diversity of perspectives that characterized the Dark Council's collective decision-making process. Some members responded with anger at the presumption of external entities evaluating Imperial civilization. Others demonstrated fascination with the technological and consciousness-expanding opportunities integration might provide. A few expressed skepticism about the authenticity or reliability of the evidence Marr had presented. Darth Marr, whose political instincts typically focused on immediate power dynamics rather than cosmic implications, raised concerns about the domestic consequences of accepting Valkorian's proposals. Regardless of the potential benefits, integration with an external meta-civilization could destabilize Imperial society in ways that create more immediate threats than those we're supposedly protecting against, he argued. During the Council's private deliberations following Marr's formal presentation, the Emperor's eventual response to the Council's briefing demonstrated the complex analytical capabilities that had enabled him to maintain Imperial leadership across centuries of galactic upheaval. Rather than making immediate decisions about Valkorian's integration offer, he authorized expanded intelligence operations designed to gather additional information about Zakuulan capabilities and intentions while simultaneously preparing Imperial society for potential transformations that might prove necessary regardless of the choices leadership ultimately made. The evidence Lord Marr has presented suggests that our civilization stands at a crossroads that will determine not just our immediate survival, but our role in cosmic processes that operate beyond our current comprehension, the Emperor observed during a private audience with Marr following the council session. Wisdom requires that we prepare for multiple possible futures while maintaining the flexibility to adapt our responses as additional information becomes available. The preparation phase that followed involved systematic efforts to strengthen Imperial society's resilience and adaptability without triggering the social disruption that premature revelation of the Eternal Empire's existence might cause. Educational systems quietly began incorporating expanded perspectives on galactic history and consciousness studies. Military training programs subtly introduced concepts related to dimensional manipulation and collaborative command structures. Research institutions received funding for projects exploring theoretical frameworks that might prove relevant to consciousness expansion and interdimensional travel. During this period, Marr found himself serving as an unofficial coordinator for preparation efforts that spanned multiple Imperial institutions and agencies. His unique combination of analytical capabilities, force sensitivity, and access to classified intelligence about the Eternal Empire made him the natural focal point for activities that required understanding of both practical administrative requirements and cosmic-scale implications. The personal toll of carrying such comprehensive awareness of the challenges facing Imperial civilization began affecting every aspect of Marr's daily routine. His meditative practices evolved to incorporate techniques designed to process information and implications that exceeded normal individual cognitive capacity. His interactions with other Imperial leaders required constant calibration to share appropriate levels of awareness without overwhelming colleagues who lacked his comprehensive understanding of the situation. The visions that came to him during deep force meditation revealed increasing urgency in the cosmic processes that were driving the integration opportunities Valkorian had presented. The networks of consciousness spanning galactic regions appeared to be preparing for challenges that required collaborative responses from civilizations throughout their sphere of influence. The timeline for Imperial decision-making was constrained not just by Zakuulan patience, but by the approach of circumstances that would make integration either impossible or far more difficult than current opportunities allowed. As weeks turned to months during the preparation phase, Marr's awareness of the approaching decision point created a sense of temporal compression that affected his perception of ordinary Imperial administrative responsibilities. Routine concerns about trade negotiations, military deployments, and political appointments seemed insignificant compared to questions about the fundamental nature of consciousness and civilization that integration with the Eternal Empire would require addressing. Yet, paradoxically, this cosmic perspective enhanced rather than diminished his effectiveness in handling traditional Imperial leadership responsibilities. Understanding the larger context within which Imperial society operated allowed him to make decisions that served both immediate practical requirements and long-term evolutionary purposes that would benefit Imperial citizens regardless of how integration questions were ultimately resolved. The approaching moment of final decision carried weight that transcended individual political or military careers to encompass the destiny of Imperial civilization itself. The choices made in response to Valkorian's integration offer would determine whether millions of Imperial citizens across hundreds of worlds would evolve toward participation in cosmic community or remain confined within developmental limitations that might ultimately prove unsustainable. Standing at the threshold of transformation that could reshape the fundamental nature of consciousness and civilization, Marr understood that his role in Imperial history had evolved beyond anything Sith training could have prepared him to handle. The path forward would require wisdom that synthesized every tradition of leadership while creating approaches to decision-making that served purposes transcending individual or even civilizational survival. The final revelation arrived not through intelligence reports or archaeological discoveries, but through direct manifestation of Valkorian's consciousness within the most secure chambers of Imperial leadership. The Eternal Emperor's ability to project his awareness across dimensional boundaries without requiring physical travel demonstrated capabilities that redefined every assumption about the nature of power, consciousness, and reality itself. The manifestation occurred during an emergency Dark Council session convened to address escalating reports of Eternal Empire vessels appearing throughout Imperial space with increasing frequency and boldness. As the Council members debated response options, the chamber's atmosphere suddenly shifted in ways that triggered every Force-sensitive individual's awareness of profound changes in the fundamental fabric of space-time. Valkorian's presence materialized not as a holographic transmission or physical intrusion, but as a direct expansion of consciousness that filled the chamber while somehow respecting the individual awareness of each council member. His voice resonated through multiple dimensions of perception simultaneously, carrying harmonics that seemed to originate from sources beyond normal auditory experience. Honored members of the Sith Dark Council, Valkorian's words formed directly within their consciousness rather than traveling through atmospheric vibrations. The time has arrived for complete revelation of the purposes that guide our interaction with your civilization. The choices you make in response to what I am about to share will determine not only Imperial survival, but the role your species will play in cosmic processes that operate across multiple galactic regions and dimensional planes. The scope of revelation that followed transcended every framework for understanding threats and opportunities that Imperial doctrine had ever contemplated. Valkorian's consciousness carried with it direct awareness of the Eternal Empire's true nature as a meta-civilization that had evolved beyond traditional boundaries between individual and collective consciousness, between technological and mystical capabilities, between local and cosmic purposes. The Eternal Empire, as Valkorian revealed it, represented the successful integration of thousands of different species and civilizational traditions into collaborative networks that operated simultaneously across multiple dimensions of existence. Each participating civilization retained its distinctive characteristics and cultural values while contributing to collective purposes that no single species could accomplish independently. Your investigation has revealed fragments of our activities and capabilities, Valkorian continued. his consciousness providing direct experience of the cosmic scale processes he described. But the complete picture encompasses realities that transcend the analytical frameworks your current development allows you to comprehend fully. The systematic observations, the technological demonstrations, the historical influences that Lord Marr has so thoroughly documented represent preliminary phases of integration protocols that have been successfully completed by civilizations throughout this galactic region. The revelation of the integration protocol's true scope shattered every remaining assumption about Imperial autonomy and self-determination. Major historical events spanning millennia, including the Great Hyperspace War, the Mandalorian conflicts, and the recent struggle between Empire and Republic, had been orchestrated as controlled experiences designed to accelerate Imperial civilizational development along pathways that would prepare them for eventual integration opportunities. The Sith Empire's expansion, its conflicts with the Jedi, even the individual Force-sensitive bloodlines that produced the most capable leaders had been subtly influenced through manipulations of circumstance and opportunity that guided development without overtly constraining Imperial choices. The Empire had evolved according to its own cultural values and strategic decisions, but within contexts that had been carefully shaped to produce specific outcomes. The cultivation process, Valkorion explained, his consciousness allowing council members to experience directly the patience and precision required for such long-term civilizational guidance, operates across timescales that span multiple generations of individual leaders while respecting the essential autonomy of participating species. Your empire has developed according to its own internal logic and cultural imperatives, but within circumstances that were designed to enhance rather than constrain your eventual capabilities. The most shocking revelation concerned the true nature of the Force itself, as experienced by Imperial Force users. The dark side energies that Sith Lords channeled represented localized manifestations of cosmic processes that operated on scales encompassing entire galactic clusters. The passion, anger, and individual will that traditional Sith philosophy emphasized were accurate but incomplete approaches to accessing power sources that could be more fully utilized through consciousness expansion that transcended purely individual perspectives. The abilities you call Force powers, Valkorion demonstrated by manipulating matter and energy within the council chamber through methods that combine technological and mystical approaches, represent your species' initial access to cosmic processes that extend far beyond the boundaries of individual consciousness or local space-time. Integration with our networks would provide expanded access to these processes while preserving the distinctive approaches to power utilization that make Sith capabilities valuable contributions to our collective activities. The implications of expanded Force access included abilities that dwarfed anything documented in Imperial or Republic traditions. Consciousness transfer between different physical forms, manipulation of dimensional boundaries, direct influence over the development of entire civilizations, and participation in collaborative projects that spanned multiple galaxies became possible through integration with eternal Empire networks. Yet the revelation that proved most transformative concerned the ultimate purposes that drove the Eternal Empire's activities throughout the galaxy. The integration of younger civilizations wasn't motivated by conquest or resource acquisition, but by preparation for challenges that operated on cosmic scales beyond anything local galactic communities could address independently. The processes that guide galactic development, Valkorion revealed, his consciousness providing glimpses of vast cosmic cycles that encompassed the birth and evolution of entire galactic clusters, operate within larger contexts that periodically present challenges requiring coordinated responses from civilizations across multiple dimensional planes. The integration networks we have established represent collaborative preparation for participation in cosmic community that extends far beyond the boundaries of individual galaxies. The cosmic community Valkorion described included civilizations from galactic regions so distant that conventional space travel would require millions of years to establish contact. Yet, through dimensional manipulation capabilities that integration provided, participating civilizations could coordinate activities and share resources across cosmic distances that rendered traditional concepts of space and time largely irrelevant. The challenges that required such coordination included phenomena that threatened entire cosmic regions with entropy, dimensional instabilities that could affect multiple galactic clusters simultaneously, and opportunities for consciousness evolution that could benefit every participating civilization but required collaborative efforts on scales no individual species could achieve. The choice before Imperial civilization, Valkorion concluded, his consciousness conveying both the unprecedented opportunities and the genuine alternatives that integration offered, involves fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness and the purposes that guide civilizational development. Integration with our networks would preserve and enhance everything that makes Imperial culture valuable, while providing access to capabilities and opportunities that transcend current limitations. The alternative to integration wasn't conquest or destruction, but isolation within developmental constraints that would eventually prove unsustainable as cosmic processes continued evolving around Imperial territory. Civilizations that chose isolation found themselves increasingly unable to participate in galactic community as other species evolved beyond their ability to establish meaningful contact. As Valkorion's presence withdrew from the council chamber, leaving behind silence that stretched across several minutes of collective contemplation, the assembled Sith Lords found themselves confronting decisions that transcended every category of choice Imperial leadership had previously encountered. The revelation that their entire civilizational development had occurred within contexts shaped by external guidance challenged fundamental assumptions about Imperial independence and self-determination. Yet the evidence suggested that such guidance had enhanced rather than constrained Imperial development, accelerating their evolution toward capabilities that made integration opportunities possible. The ultimate question facing the Dark Council involved whether Imperial civilization would choose to transcend its current limitations through integration with cosmic community, or attempt to preserve its existing characteristics within developmental boundaries that might ultimately prove inadequate for survival in an evolving galactic environment. Standing at the threshold of transformation that could reshape the fundamental nature of consciousness itself, each council member understood that the decisions they made would determine the destiny of every Imperial citizen across hundreds of worlds and potentially influence the evolution of consciousness throughout their cosmic region. The decision that would determine the fate of Imperial civilization came not through formal Dark Council deliberations or Imperial military planning, but through a moment of profound personal revelation that transformed Marr's understanding of his role in cosmic processes that extended far beyond individual political or military concerns. 3 days after Valkorion's manifestation in the council chamber, as Imperial leadership struggled to process the implications of integration with the Eternal Empire's cosmic networks, reports began arriving from Republic space indicating that their former enemies faced identical choices about civilizational evolution and consciousness expansion. The parallel timing wasn't coincidental. Intelligence gathered through expanded reconnaissance operations revealed that Valkorion had approached both major galactic powers simultaneously, offering integration opportunities that would preserve the distinctive characteristics of each civilization while enabling their participation in collaborative networks that transcended traditional political boundaries. The recognition that Imperial and Republic civilizations were being evaluated according to the same criteria and offered similar opportunities for transcending developmental limitations provided crucial context for understanding the true nature of the choices they confronted. The Eternal Empire's integration protocols weren't designed to favor particular political systems or cultural traditions, but to identify civilizations that had evolved sufficient complexity and ethical sophistication to contribute meaningfully to cosmic community. During this period of deliberation, Marr found himself serving as the primary liaison between Imperial leadership and the expanding awareness of cosmic processes that Valkorian's revelation had initiated. His unique combination of analytical capabilities, force sensitivity, and comprehensive understanding of the integration opportunities made him the natural focal point for efforts to evaluate options that transcended every framework Imperial doctrine had provided. The meditative practices he developed during this crucial period incorporated techniques that allowed him to process information and implications that exceeded normal individual cognitive capacity. By expanding his consciousness beyond purely personal perspectives while maintaining connection to his essential Imperial identity, he began experiencing directly the forms of awareness that integration with eternal Empire networks would provide to every participating individual. These expanded states of consciousness revealed the true scope of the cosmic processes that were driving the integration opportunities Valkorian had presented. The networks of civilizations that participated in Eternal Empire collaboration weren't uniform or standardized, but represented diverse approaches to consciousness and capability that created synergistic effects through their coordination. Each participating civilization contributed distinctive perspectives and capabilities to collective projects that addressed challenges operating on scales that no individual species could handle independently. The diversity of approaches and viewpoints actually enhanced the effectiveness of collaborative efforts by ensuring that complex problems were addressed from multiple analytical and creative perspectives simultaneously. The integration process. Marr reported to the assembled Dark Council during their final deliberative session, doesn't require abandoning Imperial identity or values, but rather expanding them to encompass responsibilities and opportunities that serve purposes beyond our current understanding. The evidence consistently indicates that participating civilizations retain their distinctive characteristics while gaining capabilities that allow them to transcend previous developmental limitations. The Council's ultimate decision reflected the pragmatic wisdom that had enabled Imperial civilization to survive and prosper through centuries of galactic upheaval. Rather than making immediate commitments to full integration, they authorized a graduated process of engagement that would allow Imperial society to experience the benefits of expanded consciousness and capability, while maintaining the flexibility to adjust their participation according to how the process affected Imperial citizens and institutions. The Emperor's personal response to the Council's recommendation demonstrated the complex analytical capabilities that had sustained his leadership across multiple galactic eras. The opportunities presented by the Eternal Empire transcend traditional categories of alliance and opposition, he observed during his private consultation with Marr following the Council's decision. Wisdom requires that we approach integration as an evolutionary process rather than a political agreement, allowing our civilization to develop into forms that can benefit from expanded consciousness while preserving the essential characteristics that make Imperial contributions valuable. The initial phases of integration proceeded through carefully orchestrated interactions between Imperial institutions and Eternal Empire representatives who provided technical and philosophical guidance for consciousness expansion activities. Educational systems began incorporating expanded perspectives on the nature of reality and consciousness. Research institutions gained access to theoretical frameworks that accelerated technological development in directions that enhanced rather than replaced existing Imperial capabilities. Most importantly, individual Imperial citizens began experiencing voluntary opportunities to expand their awareness beyond purely personal perspectives, while maintaining complete continuity of individual identity and values. The process enhanced rather than suppressed personal characteristics, allowing individuals to retain their distinctive personalities while gaining access to collaborative relationships and shared knowledge that enriched their understanding of themselves and their universe. The results exceeded every projection. Imperial leadership had developed about the potential benefits of integration. Citizens who participated in consciousness expansion programs reported enhanced personal satisfaction and creative capabilities alongside expanded awareness of their connections to cosmic processes that operated beyond local concerns. The improvements in individual capability contributed to enhanced collective effectiveness that strengthened Imperial society at every level. The technological developments that accompanied consciousness expansion provided Imperial civilization with capabilities that transformed their ability to protect their citizens and extend beneficial influence throughout galactic space. Defensive systems that operated across multiple dimensions of space-time made Imperial territory essentially invulnerable to conventional military threats. Resource manipulation technologies eliminated scarcity concerns that had previously constrained Imperial expansion and development. Perhaps most significantly, the expanded consciousness that integration provided revealed the true nature of the cosmic challenges that had motivated the Eternal Empire's integration protocols. The collaborative networks that Valkorion coordinated were preparing for phenomena that operated on scales encompassing entire galactic clusters, challenges that required coordinated responses from civilizations across multiple dimensional planes. The specific nature of these cosmic challenges remained beyond Imperial understanding even after initial integration phases had been completed. But the collaborative preparations provided reassurance that civilizations throughout their cosmic region were working together to address whatever circumstances might arise. As months turned to years during the integration process, Marr's role evolved from Imperial military and political leader into something entirely new in galactic history. His consciousness expanded through integration with Eternal Empire networks, while retaining complete Imperial identity and values, served as a bridge between traditional Imperial institutions and the cosmic community they were joining. The transformation wasn't confined to Marr individually, but reflected changes occurring throughout Imperial society as more citizens gained access to consciousness expansion opportunities. The Imperial civilization that emerged from successful integration retained every characteristic that had made their culture distinctive and valuable, while gaining capabilities that allowed them to participate in cosmic processes previously beyond their comprehension. The resolution of the integration question provided Imperial civilization with forms of security and opportunity that transcended anything their previous development had made possible. The threats and limitations that had previously constrained Imperial expansion and development became manageable through access to collaborative resources and capabilities that operated on cosmic scales. Yet perhaps the most profound aspect of the resolution concerned the preservation and enhancement of individual identity and cultural values that had initially made Imperial civilization attractive to the Eternal Empire's evaluators. Integration enhanced rather than replaced the characteristics that made Imperial contributions valuable, creating outcomes that benefited everyone involved in the collaborative process. The young Sith Lord, who had begun his career seeking to protect Imperial civilization through superior military strategy, had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history, a consciousness that served both Imperial values and cosmic purposes, while transcending traditional boundaries between individual and collective awareness, between local and universal concerns, between temporal and eternal perspectives. Years flowed like gentle currents through the transformed Imperial space, carrying with them the quiet satisfaction of a civilization that had discovered its place within the vast tapestry of cosmic consciousness. The integration process had unfolded with a grace that surprised even those who had faith in its potential, creating outcomes that enhanced every aspect of Imperial society while preserving the essential characteristics that made their culture distinctive and valuable. In the rebuilt cities of Dromund Kaas, where the eternal storms still danced across skies that now held deeper meaning, Imperial citizens moved through their daily routines with awareness that extended far beyond their immediate concerns. The consciousness expansion that integration had provided didn't overwhelm individual identity, but enriched it. allowing people to maintain their personal characteristics and cultural connections while understanding their participation in cosmic processes that operated across galactic regions and dimensional planes. The markets and administrative centers that had once buzzed with the urgent energy of political maneuvering and military preparation now hummed with different rhythms. Citizens engaged in their work with satisfaction that came from knowing their individual contributions served purposes that transcended local concerns while remaining grounded in the practical needs of family, community, and cultural continuity. Children played in parks where the very air shimmered with possibilities that previous generations could never have imagined. Their laughter carried undertones of awareness that suggested natural adaptation to expanded consciousness, growing up with understanding of cosmic community as simply another aspect of their normal environment, rather than something extraordinary or challenging. The educational systems that prepared these young minds for participation in integrated galactic civilization incorporated wisdom traditions from hundreds of different species, while maintaining strong foundations in Imperial history, philosophy, and cultural values. Students learn to appreciate the distinctive characteristics that made their civilization unique, while understanding how those characteristics contributed to collaborative efforts that benefited everyone involved in the cosmic community. In the highest spires of the Imperial Citadel, Marr stood at the observation windows that had once framed his contemplation of purely local responsibilities, now gazing out at star fields that held different meanings than they had during his earlier career. The distant points of light no longer represented territories to be defended or conquered, but communities of consciousness participating in collaborative networks that operated beyond traditional concepts of space and time. The transformation in his own awareness had proceeded gradually over the years since initial integration, allowing him to retain complete continuity of identity and values while expanding his understanding of the roles consciousness could play in cosmic processes. The young Sith Lord who had once sought to protect Imperial civilization through superior military strategy had evolved into something that transcended traditional categories of individual and collective awareness, while remaining fundamentally true to the protective instincts that had always defined his character. The Force itself flowed through his consciousness with frequencies that encompassed far more than the traditional light and dark side energies that Sith and Jedi philosophies had emphasized. The cosmic processes that generated these familiar aspects of Force sensitivity operated on scales that included entire galactic clusters, creating opportunities for consciousness expansion that served purposes beyond anything local civilizations could achieve independently. During his meditative practices, which had evolved to incorporate techniques drawn from integrated civilizations throughout their cosmic region, man experienced direct awareness of the collaborative networks that connected conscious beings across dimensional boundaries that rendered conventional concepts of distance largely irrelevant. The diversity of perspectives and capabilities that participated in these networks created synergistic effects that enhanced the development potential of every participating consciousness. The peaceful rhythms of daily life throughout Imperial space reflected successful adaptation to expanded awareness that enhanced rather than disrupted normal social and economic activities. Trade networks operated with efficiency that eliminated resource scarcity while maintaining cultural diversity that enriched everyone's experience of galactic community. Technological development proceeded along pathways that solved practical problems while opening possibilities for further consciousness expansion and collaborative capability. The military institutions that had once focused on defending Imperial territory against external threats had evolved into something entirely different, maintaining their protective functions while redirecting their capabilities toward collaborative security arrangements that operated across galactic regions. The skills and dedication that had made Imperial forces effective in traditional conflicts proved equally valuable in addressing cosmic-scale challenges that required coordinated responses from civilizations throughout their dimensional networks. The Republic, having undergone their own integration process through pathways that preserved their distinctive democratic traditions and diplomatic capabilities, had become collaborative partners in cosmic community rather than political adversaries requiring constant vigilance. The conflicts that had once defined galactic politics seemed like childhood disputes when viewed from perspectives that encompassed the collaborative purposes that integration had revealed. The administrative centers where policy decisions were made now resonated with harmonics that reflected expanded awareness of the implications and opportunities that every choice created. Decisions that once required complex analysis of immediate political and military consequences could now be evaluated according to their effects on cosmic processes that operated across multiple dimensional planes and extended indefinitely into future developmental cycles. The ancient archives where Imperial history was preserved had expanded to include records of civilizational development patterns that spanned multiple galactic regions and time periods, extending far beyond the previous scope of historical consciousness. The accumulated wisdom of integrated civilizations throughout their cosmic community provided perspectives on consciousness development that enriched understanding while preserving appreciation for the unique characteristics that made each participating culture valuable. As evening approached across the Imperial capital, bringing with it the gentle transition toward rest that had always marked the natural rhythms of conscious life, the city's illumination created patterns that reflected the deeper harmonies that now connected Imperial civilization to cosmic community. The lights that had once represented purely local activities and concerns now participated in networks of meaning that extended across galactic distances while remaining rooted in the familiar textures of home and family. In the private chambers where he concluded each day's activities, Marr reflected on the journey that had transformed his understanding of what it meant to serve the dark side of the Force and protect the civilization he had always been sworn to defend. The integration process had revealed that true protection required consciousness expansion that allowed recognition of cosmic processes that operated beyond local concerns, while genuine service to the Force demanded participation in collaborative purposes that transcended individual ambition or even civilizational survival. The peaceful satisfaction that filled his awareness as he prepared for rest carried undertones of gratitude for opportunities that had exceeded every expectation he could have formed during his earlier career. The responsibilities he now carried spanned scales that would have seemed impossible when he first graduated from the Sith Academy, yet they felt natural and fulfilling in ways that purely local concerns had never achieved. Sleep approached with the gentle inevitability of cosmic cycles that operated according to patterns too vast for complete individual comprehension, yet perfectly aligned with the rhythms that sustained conscious life throughout their dimensional networks. The dreams that awaited carried possibilities for further consciousness expansion and collaborative development that would unfold across time periods that encompassed multiple generations of individual lives while preserving continuity of purpose and identity that connected all participating awareness. The stars continued their ancient movements across skies that now held deeper meaning, carrying light that connected conscious beings across cosmic distances while maintaining the intimate warmth that made individual lives precious and worthwhile. In the gentle darkness that enabled rest and renewal, cosmic community continued its patient work of consciousness development and collaborative creation, guided by wisdom that honored diversity while fostering unity of purpose that benefited everyone involved in the endless adventure of existence itself.